There was a preacher of a year gone by. He was born in 1834 and died in 1892. His name was Charles Haddon Spurgeon. He was mainly in the British Isles and over there in Britain, and he was called the Prince of Preachers. And one of the reasons was because he was so eloquent. And it was he who said, illustrations are the windows through which people see truth. And there is a lot of truth in that. Illustrations do help us understand truth. Jesus, as we looked at last week, used parables, and parables, an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. So illustrations do help us see truth. Today I'd offer a similar thought, and that's this. Relationships are the doors through which the Bible is often opened or closed. Now look at this statement for a second. Relationships are the doors through which the Bible is often open or closed. The Bible is either received or rejected. In other words, every message is filtered through the messenger. Watching what a person does speaks louder than what they say. Years ago, I came across a poem. I'm not going to quote the whole thing, but the last verse of the poem says this: I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day. I'd rather you walk the path before me than merely point the way. The eye was a more ready pupil than ever was the ear. Good advice is often confusing, but example is always clear. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapters 5 through 7, it's referred to as the Sermon on the Mount by Jesus. Several years ago, my wife and I had opportunity to go on a trip to the Holy Land. The church gave us a trip over there, and we got to see the mountains. They call them the Mountains of the Beatitudes, and it's kind of like a hillside, and you can see, and it's almost amazing that Jesus' voice could carry so many people, and hear. And so Matthew 5 through 7 is that Sermon on the Mount. It's not only informative, but it's also instructive. And this morning we want to look at 3 verses. So if you have your Bibles, if you turn over to Matthew chapter 5, we want to look at 3 verses, and we're going to consider the passage this morning. We're going to look at the principles and then the practical, okay, how it plays out in real life. So the first is the passage, and it's in Matthew chapter 5, and it's verses 14 through 16. Now, some familiar words. I'm sure you've heard these many times before. It's nothing new. But verse 14 of Matthew 5 says this: You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. Now, as you know, we've been going through the Gospel of Mark on Sunday mornings, and the last Sunday of the month, we changed the focus a little bit to evangelism, all right, or discipleship, and that's the last Sunday, and today is that last Sunday. And so in this passage, Jesus gives us kind of like our responsibility. Here's what I want you to do, all right? Notice here, as we think about this passage, there's some observations, all right? The first observation that I wrote down is this: there are different types of light. There are different types of light. Now, that's not a stretch. I want you to notice the first one. There are public lights, all right? Now, I'm not talking about, you say, what in the world are you talking about? Look, if you will, to verse 14. It says, you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, all right? Now, he's saying you, all right? Disciples of Christ are lights, and they are public lights. Now, this is not a contradiction, because some of you might be thinking, well, didn't Jesus say he was the light of the world? Over in John chapter 8 and verse 12, here's what it says. Then Jesus again spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Now, Jesus kind of clarifies this, Because a few verses later in chapter 9 and verse 5, here's what he says. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Okay? So he's not contradicting himself. He's saying, hey, while I'm in the world, I am the light of the world. And John would even tell us in John chapter 1, that was the true light which lighteth every man that comes into the world. Okay? So that's a pretty public light, all right? Here's something that I wrote in the notes. Public lights are visible to everyone. Public lights are visible to everyone. If you have been in North Florida any period of time, some of us I know grew up here, you probably have heard the name Tim Tebow. How many's ever heard that name? You ever heard that name? Okay. He grew up not too far from here, off Otis Road. All right, so not far. He was homeschooled, but he played ball or football in high school for the Nice Panthers, which is almost Ponte Vedra, St. Augustine. And he led them to a state championship in football, 4A championship in 2005. He then went on to play ball for, anybody know? The Gators, all right? Now, when I was looking in the notes, it was the Florida Gators, kind of like the Ohio State. No, the Florida Gators, okay? And when he played ball for the Florida Gators, he did something that was unique. He won the Heisman as a sophomore, first one to ever do that, 2007. The Gators won the national championship in football in 2006 and 2008. And so Tim Tebow went on to play in the NFL for a period of time. He played ball for the Denver Broncos, I think, starting out. And then he transferred to the Jets, okay? And he was a good quarterback. And what happened is the Jets in 2012 made the playoffs. And they were playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Tim Tebow did something that was unique. They have this stuff called eye paint. And he painted something under his eye. And what he painted under his eye was John 3:16. How many remember this happening, all right? He painted John 3:16. What they did not expect, there were 90 to 94 million people Googling, what is John 3:16? That's a public light, all right? To have that many people. In some areas, it broke the internet. I mean, and it's wild to think that that many people don't know what John 3:16 is. We talked about it last week. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. That's John 3:16. And of all the things you could put, he put that. What a public light. But I want you to notice another observation. There's also private lights. Look, if you will, to verse 15 of Matthew chapter 5. It says this, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all those who are in the house. So this light is in the house, all right? So it would be more private. I put it in the notes this way, those closest to us know us best. Those closest to us know us best. In other words, they see us up close, right? I mean, they know the good and the bad. They know the dirt, they know the good things. They know the good qualities. They know the not so good qualities. They know if you make your bed or if you don't make your bed, all right? They know if you take out the trash or you don't take the trash. They know, the people around us, they know us, right? And notice what he says here about, here's the contrast. Our lights are to shine, right? They shine publicly. They can shine privately. And those closest to us know us best. If we say that we're Christian, we have accepted the Lord Jesus Christ into our hearts as our Savior, people should rightfully expect us to act accordingly, right? The purpose of all lights is to shine, to increase visibility, to give light to all those who are in the house. Doing so, giving light to all those that are in the house, prevents accidents, all right? A number of years ago, I would try to go out early in the morning and jog about 3 to 5 miles. It's turned into walking now, but I still try to do that. And when I was doing the jogging, I would go out the garage door at the time, and when our kids were growing up, one of the things that I would try to tell and emphasize to the kids, make sure you put your roller blades up, okay? And guess what? They didn't. And so on that particular morning, I came out to go do my jog, and boom, on rollerblades, and twisted my ankle. And I will have to say, I was not a happy camper, all right? I didn't go jogging that morning, and I'm sure I probably was not the best Christian example to my kids, all right? I kind of blew it, all right? Sometimes light prevents us from having accidents. It's real important. The little back light on that back set of stairs, that can be a lifesaver, right? And the purpose of all lights is to shine. But that brings us to the second consideration this morning, and that's the principles. And this principle, this first one, I really want to make sure you get it, all right? Because it's very important, and that's this. How you shine your light is important. How you shine your light is important. Children's church sometimes, they'll sing that song, "This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. This little light of mine," and hide it under a bushel. No, not going to let Satan blow it out. They go through the whole thing. We're not going to do the song this morning, all right? I think you've got it, okay? But it's a reminder. How we shine our light is important. Let me give you an illustration. Maybe this will help you understand. It sticks out in my mind. When I was in high school here in the academy, there were 3 of us young men that heard about getting a high school job at United Parcel Service, UPS. And so we were going to get on and work what they call the metro shift. It was from about 5 p.m. in the afternoon to about 8, 8:30, 9 in peak season. And we got hired during the October. From October to December is the peak season, a lot of packages and so forth. And what they told us is that if you prove yourself to be good workers, we may hold on to you after Christmas. And so sure enough, all 3 of us that applied got the job, and we were happy, and they held on to us after Christmas, all right? And so we were working the metro shift every day. And because I was the oldest, I was the primary driver, all right? They didn't have cars, and I didn't have a car either, but I was using my parents' second car, all right? And we would drive to work. And so sometimes I would take them home. Well, the next year, one of the other young men, Randy Williams, some of you know him, he was my friend. He also got a car. And what he got was, it was a used car. It was a 1963 Plymouth Valiant, all right? It was totally black. It was a retired police car, okay? And we called it affectionately the Black Bomb, all right? Because it was old and, the one thing it did have, though, at that time, which was cutting edge, it had an S3 blindingly bright searchlight mounted on the driver's side, okay? That comes up into play in just a minute. So after work, Randy is driving that particular night. After work, we're coming home. It's probably 8:30, 8:45. It's probably during the wintertime, so it's already dark, all right? And we're on US 90, Beaver Street. And just so you kind of get a frame of reference, those that are familiar with this side of town, it's about where Publix warehouse is now, okay? And so we're going down, we're coming west on Beaver Street. I'm riding in the front seat. He's driving. And so coming eastbound on US 90, there's a person with their brights on, okay? And so Randy kind of hits his, brights and then dims them, to kind of like asking for that person to dim them. They didn't do anything. So Randy says, okay, let me try it again. Shows them brights, dim, nothing. Randy did something that was probably not wise. He said, okay, you want to play that game? So he rolls down his window, and he had Mr. S3. He flipped that little thing around, that searchlight, and this was probably not the wisest move. But click, he hits that thing, and that car coming with the brights on kind of swerved, and they were within 100 yards of us. That's why it was not wise. But then they dimmed their lights pretty quick, all right? Now, here's where we about panicked. As the car went past us, it was a Florida State Trooper. And we thought, oh, my goodness. Now, I don't know if he thought we were law enforcement and he kept going, but he kept going, and we kept going, all right? But he dimmed his lights. Now, here's the point. It was kind of a funny story. I texted Randy this week because I wanted to get the details of the 63 Plymouth Valiant, you know. And he said, oh, good times. I said, yeah, I'm glad we survived them, you know. But here's the point I want you to get this morning. Sometimes it's possible to hold the gospel in an obnoxious, hateful way that it causes people, you know, just like we couldn't hardly see to drive, it can cause people to turn away the gospel of Jesus Christ. I dare say if I ask the question this morning, how many people have been hurt by another Christian? Most of us could probably raise our hand. Maybe many over. All right? The point is this. How we hold the light is very important. The Apostle Paul faced a similar situation over in Philippians chapter 1. Notice what he says in verse 15. He says, some, to be sure, are preaching Christ even from envy and strife, but some also from goodwill. The latter do it out of love, knowing that I am appointed for the defense of the gospel. The former proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition rather than from pure motives, thinking to cause me distress in my imprisonment. What then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed. And in this I rejoice, yes, and I will rejoice. So what was Paul saying? There were some people that were preaching Christ out of, King James calls it contention, you know, and out of envy and strife, thinking that they're going to hurt Paul even though he's in prison. They're thinking, man, you know what? You deserve that, boy. Envy and strife, and they'd preach Christ. There's others that were preaching Christ out of love. And Paul came to the conclusion, get this is kind of a step of maturity, isn't it? Whether Christ was preached out of contention or out of love, the main thing, Christ was preached. And he says, in that I will rejoice. And I do rejoice. How we hold the light is important. But there's a second principle I want you to see, and that's this. The world sees the light of the kingdom through the good works of believers. Did you catch it in verse 16 of Matthew 5? Here's what it says. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. The idea is not so they glorify us. It's not so that they, oh man, thumbs up, good job. We all like that, all right? We all like, you know, when somebody pats you on the back or somebody builds you up. I mean, there are some people, boy, they have the gift of encouragement. You know, you could stay around them all day, you know. They're like, man, you know how great you really are? Yeah, well, you know. The purpose is that they would see our good works and glorify our Father, which is in heaven. That's the pointing people to Jesus. He's the one worthy of all the glory, not us. All right? If he does something good in us and we're able to help someone else, point them to Christ. There's a third principle. It goes along with this. It says, a godly life is a convincing testimony of the saving power of God. Notice what Peter said over in 1 Peter 2. He says, keep your behavior excellent among the Gentiles, so that in the thing in which they slander you as evildoers, they may, because of your good deeds, as they observe them, glorify God in the day of visitation. In other words, there are some people, and they're watching, They're seeing, and he says, they may slander you. They may say bad things about you. He said, don't get focused on that, right? But let your deeds do the talking, right? A number of years ago, I was coaching Little League out in Baldwin, and my sons were growing up, and so they were on the team. And sometimes when you have a lot of kids, the first time I coached that year, I was just an assistant helping Brother Adam Bell. Some of you remember him. And he was over the whole Baldwin Athletic Association at that time. And so I was helping him, and I was just that extra coach on the bench, Mr. Encourager. And if a kid struck out, hey, it's all right. We all do that, Here's how you can help, just encouraging. Well, the next year, because of that, he said, why don't you be a coach, And what I wasn't expecting is all those boys that were on the bench that I was encouraging, guess whose team they wanted to be on? They wanted to be on Mr. Bruce's team, all right? So that was great. Had 15 guys on the team, all right? I got invited to more birthday parties than I ever have that year. And the reason was, here's the sad thing, about half the boys didn't have a dad in the picture, all right? And so I developed these relationships. And then sometimes when you have kids like that are very vulnerable and so forth, praise means a lot, all right? And sometimes they see, and we would play some teams, and sometimes if you've ever been in park ball, there's what they call travel teams. How many are familiar with that term, travel team? All right. And it seems like, it may not be true all the time, but there's a lot of money in travel teams. I mean, their bags all match, their cleats all matched. I mean, yeah, they have the same uniform, but everything matches. And I mean, it costs money. If you've been down that road, all right? And so we played this particular team. It was a travel team, and I've got guys, and I'm just glad that they showed up with shoes on, not necessarily cleats, all right? And so we had two pitchers, and the one kid that I was going to pitch that night was sick, and so I had my son, Josh, start off pitching. And it wasn't that he was the premier pitcher. He was okay, all right? But he threw the first pitch, all right? And the coach from third base, it was a strike. He started screaming at his player that was up to bat. I can't believe you. And I thought, oh, man, we are in for it, right? And sure enough, they beat us like 20-0, I think it was, And it was called in like the fourth or fifth inning, whatever, And I thought, so many times we can focus on things that are not important. Now, I mean, we'd like to have won, right? But how we handle things, a godly life is a convincing testimony of the saving power of God. Philippians 2:15 puts it this way, so that they will prove yourselves to be blameless and innocent children of God above reproach in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation among whom you appear as lights in the world. We truly have an opportunity to let our light shine. When is light needed most? I want to give you a few thoughts here. Number one, in challenging circumstances. We all face them. James chapter 1, verse 2 and 3. Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. So when you're in challenging circumstances, that's when light is needed, okay? This is not in the notes. I added this morning, but I think it's very true. Comparison is the thief of joy. Comparison is the thief of joy. We start comparing ourselves. Oh, man, look what they've got. Look what man. I mean, and Facebook kind of eggs us on. You ever seen Facebook? They're posting pictures. Oh, they're on vacation. Man, they're at Disney World. Man, they're there. Man. I'm just here doing my own house, and I wish we had money to go to Comparison is the thief of joy, isn't it? It will steal your joy faster than anything. You start thinking, man, look at them. Boy, they're driving that. Or they're doing this. They're going there. And what happens is before you know it, comparison. That's why Paul would say over in Corinthians, comparing yourselves among yourselves, not wise, right? Because it'll steal your joy. But in times where you're challenged, that's where light's needed. There's a second one I wrote down in the notes, and that's this. In the midst of sorrow. The verse is 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 3 and 4. Blessed be the God of our and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our affliction, so that we will be able to comfort those who are in any affliction with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. In other words, he comforts us in our sorrow so that we can comfort others. When a person has been deeply hurt, sometimes they can get bitter at everything and everybody. Sometimes when a person has lost something valuable, a job, finances, maybe even a loved one, a mom or dad, an uncle, an aunt, a family member, they lose that person. And the temptation is to say, God, why? When maybe the better thing is, what? What are you teaching me through this situation? And in those times of great loss, in those times of great sorrow, people need a light. Did you catch it here? He comforts us so that we can comfort others with the comfort wherewith we've been comforted. Right? I think it's Peter that talks about later on. It's a joy that passes all understanding. The world looks at that and says, man, how can they be, this happened to them? How can they have a smile on their face? How can they have joy? I mean, this just happened. It's him. It's not us. So in midst of great sorrow. And then the third place where light is needed most is when love is expressed by actions. This is more of the positive. 1 John 3:16 says, we know love by this, that he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. All right? Lay down our lives for the brethren. The idea here is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And many times, it's love in action. It's not just saying it, it's showing it. All right? That leads us to the last observation, and that's this morning. The practical. How can we show the love of Christ to others? Right? Here's the first way. Number one, humbly live out the gospel. Humbly live out the gospel. Romans chapter 12. This is not in the notes, but here's what Paul says over in verses 14 to 16. He says, bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice, and weep with those who weep. Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not be haughty in mind, but associate with the lowly. Do not be wise in your own estimation. Did you catch it there? Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. You say, man, that's quite a swing emotionally, isn't it? Yeah. Years ago in ministry, I had, I think it was 2 funerals and 2 weddings in the same day. And that was, in my mind, sticks out as weep with those who weep and rejoice with those who rejoice. And in between all those, it was opening day of baseball at Baldwin. And so they wanted me to lead in the prayer, okay? Which was, you know, comparatively, all the other stuff, it was, okay, yeah, I can do that, all right? But what took place is, at one point, it was a graveside of a stillborn baby. Those parents were hurting. Later that day, it was a member that was up in age, one of our deacons' wives. The wedding, it was couples in love, and it was exciting, and everybody was happy, and here's all the pictures, and you see that's living out the gospel. Rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. And that stretches you. There's a second way that we can show the love of Christ to others, and that is writing notes or cards. Now, some people are better at this than others. My sister is the greatest all time, okay? She writes notes, and I will say this, notes mean a lot to people. Heard a true story. It's in a John Maxwell book, so it's not original with me. But an English teacher was winding down the end of the school year, and she was teaching high school English. And as you know, as you wind down the end of the year, kids are not really focused on work sometimes. They're wanting summer vacation. And this teacher saw the students were that way, and she said, you know what? Tell you what, close your books. We're going to do something different today. Take out a sheet of paper, notebook paper, and write your name at the top. So all the kids did. There's probably 20 in the class. They all wrote their name at the top. And then she said, I want you to pass it to the person to your right. Your paper with your name on it at the top. Pass it to the person to your right. So they did that. And then she said, here's the assignment. In 2 minutes, I want you to write the person's name at the top of that paper, what you like about them. Ready, go. So 2 minutes. And then after 2 minutes, okay, stop. Now, if you'll pass it to the person to your right again. And so they did that exercise until the papers got all the way around to the person, it was their name. And the kids, they read them, and, oh, man, that's neat. Oh, I didn't know you thought that about me. It really had discussion for a few days. They were buzzing about it. Nobody thought much about it. Kids graduated. Some went to college, some went to the military. About 3 years went by, and all of a sudden, it was discovered, it was announced on the news that one of the young men in her class, that had been in her class, had been killed in a military conflict. Everybody came to the funeral. That class. And as they were there and they were talking and the family was grieving and the son was in full military outfit, and teacher came a little late. And the mother of the young man came up to her after the funeral and said, could I speak with you just a moment? She said, sure. She said, you may not remember ever doing this, but one day in your class, you had the kids write notes, what they liked about the student beside them, and passed it around. And she said, when my son's things were returned, we found this in his wallet, and it had been folded and unfolded many times. And it made a difference in his life. She said, thank you. It's been said that the written word is 10 times more powerful than the spoken word. We have the ability. Some of you are gifted at it. You can write someone. Maybe share the gospel. It can make an eternal difference in their life. There's another way. You can take somebody out for coffee or have them over to eat at your house. Right? Saw something funny this week. It said, I saw a person at Starbucks and they didn't have a laptop or a notebook or anything. They were just drinking coffee. How weird. I thought, well, that may be true, But you can take somebody, you can make a difference in somebody's life. Our last thing, you can offer your time and effort to help them. Offer to help somebody. Maybe it's a project. I know a man years ago, and he had to deliver some sand to his, or some builder sand to his driveway because he kept getting stuck. And it was after church one night, and I saw it on the way home, and thought, here he was out there with a shovel. He had a whole, 18 load to. I thought, man, he needs some help. That makes a difference in people's lives. Understand it does take time. It takes work. Sometimes it's hard work. I'll close with this illustration. Over in China, there's a type of bamboo tree. And what's unique about this bamboo tree is that it needs watering every day. Right? And what happens is you water it every day, and for 4 years, nothing takes place above the surface. Nothing. No sprout, no little twig comes up, nothing. For 4 years. But in the 5th year, what takes place is that particular bamboo tree will grow over 90 feet tall in year 5. True story. Discipleship is a lot like that. Some of you have lived through that. You've invited folks to church, you've come alongside folks, and you've kind of helped them along, and you've ministered to them, and it. Sometimes you ask yourself, is it worth it? Understand, it's worth it. God gives the increase. In fact, the last verse I'll share with you is 1 Corinthians 3:6, where Paul said, I planted, Apollos watered, but God was causing the growth. That's how it is in discipleship. That's how it is working with sometimes neighbors, our friends, or people you run into at the store, or people that you have associations with through business. It's little by little. We can show them the love of Christ, and that makes all the difference. It's a daunting task. I was telling the men today in our men's biblical leadership class in Sunday school, one of my favorite shows growing up was a show called Mission Impossible. I don't know if I know that dates me. I'm not talking about the movies. That was later. But the original show. And one of the things that was intriguing about it, they'd say, your mission, should you decide to accept it. And I always wondered, what if you don't accept it? Nah, I don't want that. It's too much. But they always accepted it, And so the mission is the gospel. Jesus said, go into all the world, preach the gospel. That's our mission. It's daunting. It's impossible. But with God's help, we can do it. And it makes a difference in lives. I dare say everyone in here can probably think of someone who needs Jesus right now. That maybe they're hurting, or maybe they're going through some stuff, or maybe they're maybe isolated from people that seem like it. And we have the answer. I trust we'll share the answer is Jesus.